No, that's not going to be engaging and snappy. Did you know there are 10 billion microorganisms in a teaspoon of soil? My favourite one is Mycobacterium vaccae, and this helps with the production of serotonin in the brain.
Yay, new serotonin.
And serotonin is a happy. And serotonin is what the fuck is serotonin?
Is it a neurotransmitter or is it a
Yeah, serotonin is a happy
or is it a
chemical.
hormone? Yeah, it's
Serotonin is our brain's happy chemical. Hi, I'm Alex. I'm a doctoral researcher in UK food systems with the Centre for Doctoral Training, and I'm doing my thesis in the links between humans and soil and trying to rebuild the relationship, get people understanding why soil's so important for our health, for the environment, for the climate crisis, biodiversity. It is really the cornerstone of life. I set up Generation Soil to really educate people about why soil's so important and to help regenerate soil health, rebuild that connection. That's it in a nutshell.
So my name's Katie. I'm the MD of Microbz Probiotic. It's a company that was started by my parents, Sue and Jeff, about 20 years ago. And we've been kind of messing around with fermentation for that long, really. So all of our probiotics are soil-based, so we make them from organic soil and we ferment them 4 or 5 times and blend them with herbs and minerals. And then we add them to loads of different environments. I kind of think of myself as a bit of a kind of microbial rewilder. So just any environment, whether it be people's guts or gardens or homes or agriculture, just adding more beneficial microbes that come from soil. I think there's a lot that's been lost through pollution, use of chemicals, and lots of that has damaged our microbial populations, both in soil and in our bodies and environments. So we kind of work to add more microbes in every place, and we see the benefit of that. It's really encouraging. Just the amount of people that come to us and say, I mean, I won't get too graphic, but I haven't had a poo for 10 days, or I've had a poo 10 times today. The other thing I find quite often from our customers is people tend to not just have one health issue, they tend to have like stacks of them. I think most of my customers can give us a list of the issues that they face health-wise. And the stats all show that cancers are getting more chronic and younger, especially colon cancer, which is a lot about nutrient intake. I find that terrifying.
Yeah, I think IBS is one that comes up a lot. Maybe 5-10 years ago, it wasn't really a thing that we were aware of, and then it's made its way onto social media and all these little videos. Either you're going to the toilet too much, you're not going enough, you're feeling bloated. Again, the linking issues around that of like fatigue and brain fog and
Hormone disruption.
yeah, there's loads of things interlinked. And while IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, like a syndrome, is a variety of different symptoms that they haven't been able to link to anything in particular. And I think what's really interesting at the moment, we've had 5 years of gut health and brain health being in the media, but we haven't had too much on soil health and soil microbiology and the biodiversity of microbes within the soil. But alongside the human health issues, we're also seeing the environmental issues, and the nutrient density in food is on the decline. For one orange 50 years ago, you now have to eat 16 oranges or something like that to get the same amount of nutrients. And while we're having a decline in the nutrient availability of our food, we're also seeing alongside it health-related issues. And it's like, wow, are these two happening separately? No, they're kind of happening at the same time. I guess we haven't really got 100% clear evidence on what's driving what, but if you're looking at the rise of chronic health conditions, scientists are linking it very much to environmental factors and lifestyle choices, mainly diet.
In the research that I've done, it's all about the small amounts of magnesium, potassium, zinc, all these things. As humans, we don't need that much of them, but we need consistently to be getting little amounts of them in order to build our bodies. It's those key nutrients that are declining in our food by like 46% in the last 50 years or something. So it's kind of halved, and that's the scariest bit, I think, maybe not only for our generation, but for our kids who might grow up in situations where their food nutrition is really poor and they're exposed to a lot of ultra-processed foods. What's the impact going to be on their bodies? The link from the gut and the brain, we tend to think of IBS as physical condition, but it's also a very mental condition. So the link between your bowel habits and your mood, and the link between your mood and your bowel habits, is so symbiotic. In this food web and nutrient web, nothing can be taken independently. ultimately it is all linked, and more research shows us that.
Yeah, and I think one final point to add to that is the farming model that we've adopted post World War II with the Green Revolution and the introduction of chemical fertilisers. We've been adding plenty of NPK, nitrogen, potassium, phosphorus, but we haven't been adding the magnesium, the iron, all these other trace micronutrients that our bodies need to thrive. But we haven't really thought about it. The paradigm that we are coming to the end of now is one of we need to produce calories, we need to produce lots of them to feed what was a rapidly growing population and still is a growing population. We succeeded in achieving that goal of feeding people the macronutrients, but we're now feeding ourselves arguably too many macronutrients, like our carbohydrate content, fat content, protein content. We're consuming globally mostly. A lot of places are now starting to overconsume, but we are also now under-consuming those micronutrients, and that's causing a really interesting balance in what we're consuming, which is not the best for our health.
I agree. I wonder if it'd be helpful for people to understand in a nutshell how plants get those nutrients from soils. So, and I'm sure a soil scientist would please correct me where I get this wrong, but it's my understanding that a carrot, say, growing in the ground, has the ability to send out through sugar what it requires to grow properly into the soils. And the microbial diversity goes and finds that in the soil and delivers it to the plants, which makes it have that potassium and zinc and all that kind of stuff. So what we're talking about here is it's a living process. Your food is not just alive. The way that it's grown in soil is all a living process, and that happens inside our bodies too. And I just think that's absolutely fascinating, and therefore this modern farming has kind of killed that process. A carrot is still a carrot, but it doesn't have that living soil relationship that it once had to the same degree. So what we're trying to rebuild or talk about as being really important is this relationship between the plant and the soil that it's grown in.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and spoke about this before. My introduction into soil was a bit of an accident, and in 2016 I was choosing my university modules. I didn't choose soil because I thought it was boring. Why would I want to study that for 3 years? So I left it. And I think my understanding of the soil then and how nutrients get into plants was you have to add the nutrients into the soil, and the plants then take up the nutrients that we've added into the soil, which, while that's not incorrect, it is then disrupting the natural cycles of the nutrients within the soil going into the plants. So our use of chemical fertilizers and pesticides on the soil then weakens the relationship between the microorganisms within the soil and the plants we're growing in the soil. And when we're disrupting those cycles, we're killing the microorganisms. We are destroying that relationship that the microbes within the soil and the plants have had for millions of years. They've co-evolved together to have that relationship to benefit each other. So while the plant is photosynthesizing, it's feeding the soil some of the product that it photosynthesizes, so the sugars. And as the sugars go into the soil, as you were saying earlier, that's attracting the right microorganisms to that plant to pass the nutrients from the microorganisms into the plant. That's not really been happening anymore because we've been messing around with nature by using these chemicals.
And also, we're part of that system too. I think we forget that then that system happens inside us too. That it's the microbes inside us that when you eat, take your food and take the nutrients from your food and make it into blood and bone and brain cells. So that's why I love working with microbes so much, because it really takes you back to the connection between you, everything around you, and microbes are a big driver in that process. And I would love it if, as humans, we could just be more aware and connected. Like what I had for breakfast this morning is now part of me, and that's not a process I do on my own, a process that happens with all these billions of microbes and feels very similar from soil.
I mean, arguably, you've probably done nothing in that.
Nothing, yeah.
In the grand scheme of things, in that process, you have chewed it with your teeth and stored it, and
Like a
then
chipmunk.
and then rather than in the cheeks, you've stored it in your stomach.
Yeah.
And the microbes are all living in your stomach.
Doing all the jobs.
We know they're there now. It's been shown all over the news that they're within us. We're not digesting that food. They're the ones who are inside our stomachs, breaking it down even further into the smaller, more digestible molecules that we can then absorb.
And taking it through the gut lining into amino acids. Yeah, I just think it's a fantastic process. When you're talking about the microbiome in an individual, you need to be looking at things from birth and even before that, probably in every aspect of life. So there's lots to be said about breastfeeding, vaginal births. Before kids are 2 to 3, a lot of their health and microbiomes developed. So lots of being outside, pets are really good, and there's lots of things that can be done in those first few years. And that's why this declining nutrition is so important, because of the kids who will be eating less microbes and nutrients in their food, even if it is good quality food. And then it's all about what you're exposed to. So nature, I mean, just like go out, roll around, be in nature. Most of our lives are spent indoors, and it's just really, really bad for your microbiome. What I love about microbes, they do two jobs in my mind. One is they break stuff down so beautifully, and they do a fermentation process, which is all about breaking stuff down. And two, they build stuff up. They make the world, they make bones, and we need that. And being out in nature is the number one way to get it.
I've got an interesting thing to add to that, I think. Have you heard of geophagy?
I have, oh, phage.
Geophagy? Is it geophagy?
I've heard of phages.
I don't know
I'm
what
not
a phage is.
Okay, well, you go first.
Well, so geophagy, it's coming from phagy is eating or consuming, geo, earth, and it's a process that's been documented in nature and also in humans, the consuming of soil.
Oh, cool.
So you've got animals eating soil.
My dog definitely does.
There we go. Is your dog healthy?
Yes.
Well, there's indigenous communities where pregnant women would eat soil for the nutrition within it. Part of that, I think, intuitively, if you've got really healthy soil, that has got so much nutrition and so many microbes in it, and consuming that is beneficial to us. And soil could almost be seen as would that be a prebiotic or a probiotic?
I think it would be a probiotic, but it probably has prebiotics in it as well. It's probably a bit of both. But I think that's definitely true in England too. I mean, we used to not wash our food to the same extent, and we used to just ingest a lot more food from not boiling it or cooking it too much or eating it straight out of the dirt, and that gives you so much more goodness. But that's really amazing. Have you tried it?
No, I haven't. Not yet. Not yet.
I would consider eating that one. If you put it on a plate with something like maybe as a
little garnish.
Yeah, you can do that.
Instead of having some sesame seeds, you could just have a little bit of soil sprinkled on the top.
Yeah, it's just in our minds that we think it's wrong, right? I mean,
yeah, and I don't really know where that's come from. We've kind of got this misconception that soil's dirty and gross and unhygienic, and a lot of people don't want to get dirty. I'll run a food education workshop, and they'll be like, "Oh, no, they can't touch the soil. They've just washed their hands." Or, "Oh, no, don't let them get their nice clothes dirty. Let me take their coat off." I'm just there, like, covered in mud, just like, I'm fine, and they'll probably be like, I don't know, you'd seem pretty weird, and I'm just like, oh, I don't know, you're the weird one here.
Have you heard of the hygiene hypothesis?
No, but please tell me about it.
It's basically the hypothesis that because kids are exposed to way less dirt, they have created way more allergies. So, you know, having a house or an environment, internal environment that's too clean has led to the increase in allergies, which has really only happened in the last 50 years. And I think if we look at general trends like the hygiene of our homes and the hygiene of our food and the outcomes when it comes to health, that there is so much to be drawn from that in terms of creating these over-sanitized environments, over-chemicalized environments, and they're having massive knock-on effects. This kill 99.9% of all germs, I think, is one of the worst marketing slogans that ever was.
And I think that kill 99% of all germs is very reminiscent of the Aldrin campaign post-World War II, when they repurposed all these chemicals that they developed as pesticides. And there's a poster. So Shell used to make this pesticide called Aldrin. It is now banned, but the advertising poster, there's all these little insects and ants, and they've all got their army helmets on, and they've all got their guns. The war on pests in farming. So it's kind of like this obsession of that shouldn't be there. Let's kill it. Let's get rid of it. It's bad. And it's like, yeah, you can get harmful bacteria, you get pathogens, but by destroying everything, you are then providing a blank playing field where the opportunistic pathogens are going to thrive, because they are way better at colonising blank space and sort of taking over. Whereas we're not really here to fight the pathogens, we're here to support the beneficial microorganisms, the lactic acid bacteria that we've co-evolved with for billions of years.
I find this amazing. You're absolutely right. They've done studies now. If you clean a surface with antibacterial wipe, the first thing that comes back, you kill 99.9% of germs, the first thing that comes back are the pathogens. So actually this idea that we have have to kill the bad ones, war against the bad ones, has undermined the health of all the good ones. In the world of microbiology, what we're looking for in our work is balance. So yes, there are some bad ones, yes, there are some good ones. So in order to create a thriving environment, if you add some good ones, and that can create a healthy, thriving process, it's normal to have a few pathogens, and it's the good bacteria, they outcompete the bad ones. It's a natural process. We'd be wrong to say it's all about the good ones, and it's to fight either way would be wrong. It's a natural process. It's about balance.
Yeah, I think for some reason we've gone down this obsessive route of kill, kill, kill. But has that ever been a good solution
No.
to anything? I don't think so.
What you fight, you make stronger, I think.
Yeah, if you're applying antibiotics, you then get antibiotic resistant pathogens.
And that's actually undermined in a lot of our societies. I mean, we're talking about in 10 years' time, people that we know and love might be dying from curable diseases because antibiotics are becoming more resistant. So it could be coming down the path as quite a terrifying future.
And I think maybe a way of combating that is working with the beneficial microbes, allowing them to continue their evolution. They've kind of adapted.
In COVID, it was the people that had the best microbiomes that were more resilient. I can point to 10 studies that will show that. And I believe, and I'm yet to be proven right or wrong about this, that when it comes to antibiotic resistance, it'll be the people who use the most antibiotics that will be the least resilient to antibiotic resistance. And the people that, have more microbes in their lives, in their environments, that will be more resilient.
Yeah, I think anecdotally, since I've started looking after my microbiome, my health has been much better. I used to suffer terribly with IBS symptoms.
Oh, did you?
Brain fog, just like struggling in day-to-day life and just feeling really ill and lethargic and tired. And it got so bad. This is kind of how I got interested in microbes, to be fair. And I started off with fermenting foods, so making my own sauerkraut.
Yum.
And then I got the book, The Art of Fermentation by Sandor Katz, which has this beautiful opening paragraph about how we've co-evolved with microbes and how we need to be nurturing them and working with them still, rather than saying microbes are bad, leave them alone, don't go near them, kill them. And since then, I've learnt more and got more interested in it. Fascinating world that we can't see with our own eyes and don't know too much about. And since doing that, my health has got so much better. I've just come off the back of a cold, and that's like the first cold I've had for at least half a year. Quite nice, like 6-month period, like, yes, I haven't been ill.
Yeah, but I think that's a really important point, this whole idea of you can't see them, and therefore so many people discount them, or they can't be on every surface or everywhere, but you can really see the impact of not having them. Like in a lot of instances you can see the impacts of not having them, and for me this comes back to our farm in Wiltshire. So we've been using microbes there for the last 20 years, and the amount of wildlife that is there just blows my mind. So we have one of the biggest bird populations in Wiltshire. We have an abundance of flowers of every variety, wildflowers, and we've got snakes, great crested newts, we've got rare this and rare that, and I just feel like that biodiversity is built upon this web of microbes. And so for me that's a real solution. It's like, yes, you can't see them, but you can see the impact of them not being there or of them being there, and I guess that requires a bit of trust from people and maybe more science, but all the science just points in that direction.
Yeah, there's a lot of science coming out at the moment. The concept of living soil is a relatively new one in the grand scheme of things. Soil science used to just be testing for the sand, silt and clay and the geological part of soil. A bit of progression of science, bringing in the biology and the life into it, and yeah, now we know that soil is not just a inert brown mess beneath our feet that isn't really good for very much. We've kind of seen the continuing decline of soil health, but also look what happens if we work with the microorganisms, to what impact that has on the environment. And as you're describing your farm in Wiltshire, you've got incredible biodiversity that you can see with your own eyes above ground, but that's not the same for every farm. And the farms where you don't have that incredible rich biodiversity and life, they're the ones that have been treated with pesticides and fertilizers, and it's really damaged the ecosystems.
So what is living soil? Is there kind of a definition? Or
There's a really good way of looking at it from this really cool soil researcher nerd. I think he'd like being called that. Matt Powers. I'm sure he would. If he's anything like me, then I'm sure he would. He's broken it down in his book on regenerative soils. You've got the hardware, and the hardware is the sand, silt and clay, your silica-based geology within the soil, which on its own doesn't do very much, can't hold water, can't sustain life. It's just there. And while you can upgrade the hardware a little bit by providing providing more silt, for example. There's not too much that you can do with that. And then comes the operating system, and the operating system is the organic matter. So we're sat here at the Generation Soil Composting Hub,
Yay.
where we turn food waste and wood shavings and biochar, organic materials, into compost. And how do we do that? This thing here. What happens in here? It's just a breeding ground for bacteria. It's really nice and moist in there. It's nice and warm in there. So the organic matter is the food source, and without that you can't really hold any meaningful volume of water, and without the water you can't have the life. Without that, nothing can happen. But to tap into that organic matter, you've got to have somebody using the operating system on the hardware, and the users of the operating system on the hardware are the microorganisms and the other creatures, your nematodes, your protozoa, up to your earthworms. They're the ones that really sort of allow the soil to cycle
and breathe. I think about it like breathing because of all the kind of space that they create.
Yeah, and so you've got the hardware, the sand, salt and clay, which provides minerals and a bit of nutrition, which the microbes can access, but they're not going to be there without the operating system, the organic matter, which is then feeding them and providing a source of moisture within the soil. And then the microbes are there continuing the decomposition of the organic matter, breaking it down, consuming. The organic matter is their food. So like we sit down and we have our dinner, they don't know if they sit down or if they stand up or what they do, but they're also eating. They need to eat, and they need the moisture, they need the food, and they need the oxygen as well.
Yeah, and they change it into something else. I think it's fantastic. I think the water retention thing for me is so interesting when it comes to climate change and agriculture in general. But I'm interested in what you think about this whole teaspoon of good quality soil has more microbes than there are people on the planet.
What do I think about it? I think everybody needs to know it. It's
It's
mind-boggling.
exactly. It blows people. People are like, well, can't be that many, really. How would you fit it on? Or like, some people have said to me, yeah, just like no. But we're talking about these microscopic miracles. They're tiny and there's billions of them.
I hadn't really sat down and fully thought about it until I was in a cafe with my friend a week or two ago. And she was saying, but do you realise the difference between 1 million and 1 billion? And I'm like, yeah. But it's like, you've seen the videos online where this is how many grains of rice are in a million, this is how many grains of rice are in a billion. And it's ridiculous. And it blows my mind. It's wild, but it's been seen and it's true.
It's true. And what I like is the opportunity. I heard a statistic the other day, something like if all of the soils in the north of Europe were regenerated, it could capture enough carbon to slightly reverse climate change or something like that. So when we're talking about soils, yes, that's 1 teaspoon that contains billions, but on a big scale, the environmental change that can be driven by soil is huge. And the opposite is true. I know a Save Soil, which is a thing run by a guy called Sadhguru, and he's got a whole Save Soil thing. He talks about the jeopardy that we're in, 50 harvests left. Soil has become popular, I think, far too late, but actually we haven't got that long to do something about it. And if we did something about it, we could do something quite significant.
And I think while it's later than we might have liked, it is now coming to the forefront. But organic matter is 40% carbon. And within the UK soils, they store 10 billion tonnes of carbon within them at the moment, which equates to 80 years worth of emissions. So by increasing the soil organic matter content through composting, through putting roots into the soil, encouraging microbes, the decomposition of organic matter, you're then storing more and more carbon within the soils. And by doing that, you're increasing the carbon content. By doing that, you're then providing more of the basic building blocks of life, which can then be used to grow trees and grow food and recover nature and improve biodiversity. But also each 1% increase in soil organic carbon per acre, 1% increase, you can then store 20,000 gallons of water extra, which is pretty nuts. If you think of farmers' fields now at 1%, 2%, the one where we're opening up our food forest market garden, that's at 6%, so that's quite high. But you can be getting up to 10, 15, 20%, maybe even further. And each 1% you're storing 20,000 extra gallons of water per acre. Think of the benefits that's going to have on flooding. People aren't going to
have the runoff that they have. The
water's just going to be held within the soil, and then when we're facing drought,
which is coming,
we're going to be able to continue growing food. If you can store more water in your soil, you don't have to water your garden as often. There are so many real world benefits that we know, and I say when we know it, it's not known by everybody, because I don't think soil's been a particularly cool and trendy thing to talk about. And maybe if you're a soil scientist scientist 20 years ago, everyone would just be like,
But now it's definitely becoming cool, and I think it needs to be seen as the solution that it is, because like you say, it just has so many benefits. There's the water, there's the carbon, there's the nature, there's the biodiversity. I feel a bit like banging my head against a brick wall. This whole food system needs to change, and it's set up to be a different way. I mean, then you've got the knock-on effects of nutrition that we've talked about, and then health impacts. It kind of blows my mind that we've created this food system and this health system which is reliant on pesticides, herbicides and supplements. Why are we taking these supplements when we should be rebuilding our soil system, our food system? And I guess we need to take it to the powers that be, or bring on the revolution.
Well, yeah, I think the exciting thing at the moment is there are initiatives popping up all over the place. I think it is very difficult to transition away from the current industrial food system with the over-reliance of chemicals.
We have farmers saying that to us all the time, like, we love what you're doing. How can I be sure I'm going to get the same yield from a microbial system rather than a glyphosate system? So maybe there has to be some interim funding, or something needs to happen in order for that transition to be easier. I don't know what the answer is, but I think it's being called for.
And I think, like with myself, that's nearly 10 years ago now. I wasn't interested in soil. I've now learnt more about it, and I'm really interested and engaged. And I think it is about engaging the whole population, but especially young people who have their whole futures and careers ahead of them. If they get interested in it, there's lots of opportunities coming and doors opening and new jobs being created by people who are working on this, and funding that is available. There's a lot more opportunity which I would never have thought about 10 years ago. And with Generation Soil, we are trying to do that by running our food system education workshops in Bristol. We're composting household food waste, which is engaging, at the moment, I think 33 households in Bristol. I speak to them quite regularly, and they're chatting to their friends about it, and they're asking questions, and it's word of mouth. And today I've been going up and down Gloucester Road flyering and chatting to people, and some people are too busy with their jobs and they'll take a flyer. There are a lot of people who are genuinely really interested and want to hear more. So I think it's just tapping into that inquisitive nature of people who care about their health and want to know these things, but haven't had the opportunity to think about it and learn about it because for some reason we don't get taught it at school. I guess this is relatively, I was going to say relatively new knowledge, but it's not. It's been known for decades, but it just hasn't quite made it into the mainstream.
It's funny when I talk about microbes as a technology, I find that really funny because it's ancient. It's a technology that created all of life, and yet now it can be used in a different way because it can be used in cleaners and all these different applications. That feels like a new technology, but it's not. It's an ancient technology.
Yeah.
From my perspective, just use more microbes everywhere. I mean, growing up in the family that I grew up in for the last 20 years, we've been using probiotics in our bodies to clean our homes, in our compost bins, in our gardens, everywhere. And they're really useful. They do so many jobs for us. They break down smells. They can clean up all of your mites in your beds. They're just incredibly useful in many different settings. And of course, we get ours from soil. So for me, it's just that kind of rewilding, and they're beneficial in so many different environments. So I would just say, whatever you can do to use more microbes in whatever setting, do it.
Yeah, I think, there's so much free content on YouTube that you can sit down, watch a 20-second video and get useful information. So you can ferment your own food waste. You can ferment your own food waste. You can ferment your own food. You can make your own kefir. Those are like really easy day-to-day things that you can do. It doesn't take very long. It takes start to finish making a massive jar of sauerkraut you could do in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Kefir, that was literally 30 seconds, just pouring some milk in. You've got to buy the grains or find somebody who you can get grains from, pour the milk in, leave it, done. So those are two really simple things that people can do that are going to benefit their life immediately. But I think longer term, it is about education and engaging with organisations who are doing this incredible work. There's a lot of them out there. I'm obviously going to plug Generation Soil in Bristol. We compost people's food waste using microorganisms, but you can do that at home yourself. If you've got a garden, you can use bokashi at home. There's plenty of videos out there on bokashi. But I think just really supporting and getting behind all of the organisations doing this work and giving them more of a platform. And the more awareness that's generated around it, the movement's only going to get bigger, because we are seeing the continuous rise of health issues and environmental issues and climate issues. And while they might not be all right on our doorstep right now, you will know somebody who's got really bad IBS and you don't see them as much anymore. There's somebody in your life who is suffering in some way. And while I'm not going to sit here and be like, microbes are going to solve everybody's problems,
I am.
They
joking.
they can definitely do a very good job at improving people's symptoms, whether that's IBS symptoms. Ultimately, this is going to benefit everybody, so it's kind of in everybody's interest to get behind it, I think.
And we can also list probably between us 10, 15, 20 organisations that are on this journey and doing really interesting things. There's Wild Farmed, who are doing heritage grains. What I like about their ambition is they're trying to impact the white bread market, because most people in the UK have a loaf of white bread, and that loaf of white bread has been seriously declining in nutritional value over the last 50 years. So their whole work is like, how can I impact the masses? Let's grow heritage grains in regenerative farms that have much higher nutritional content and sell them into places that make white bread. So that's the big change that you can make in your breakfast. And in every kind of area like that, I mean, there's regen milk farms that have a whole different way of treating their cattle. So there are these businesses coming up in all of these areas that are made for the environment and are made for people's health. So I would say support the idea of moving away from a supplement-driven society towards a food system that is nutritious. And I say that as an MD of a supplement company. But I would rather not sell you a supplement. I would rather you didn't need it. It feels like a plaster over a bigger problem, and that problem is getting more microbes into soil, getting living soil, getting more nutrition into food, getting that into people. That's a long game, so I just do anything you can to support that.
I think as an intermediate gap, your microbes are a really good way to reintroduce the beneficial microbes into your gut. But longer term, it is a plaster on a problem which is only going to get bigger if we don't do anything about it. So if we want to look into the future and the health of us
Our
when
kids'
we're
kids.
older and the future generations, it's like, well, we can't just keep sticking plasters on it and being like, okay, that's fine, that'll do. It's, we need to start looking after the soil and regenerating it. And it is so easy to do.
And also that's how we save the environment too. We can't just keep trashing the environment and sticking a plaster over that. It's two birds, one stone.
Everyone's a winner,
Everyone's a
even the microbes.
yeah.